So I was reading Mein Kampf, a long book, written by a very angry, very determined man. And then I read The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, an even longer book, written by a man who wanted to show what happened when a very angry and very determined man got his hands on an entire nation of people and drove them like a kid sailing off in his father's Maserati. As you can imagine, that joyride started out great and ended up badly. And, as I hope you can imagine, I needed a break. I had watched some vintage NBA videos for fun, and some of them gave credit to a book on basketball called The Book of Basketball, subtitled The NBA According to the Sports Guy. And I thought, that might be just what I need. Something from what they call the toy department. I got a little frightened when I picked it up at the library. It was another long book, written to that loving length by an obvious fanatic. This was not something I needed. I've come to believe that really long books are usually written by people who have gone over some kind of an edge. They are so consumed by a personal obsession that they have lost compassion for their fellow men. But this turned out to be okay. The book is an exhaustive, and I would say exhausting, examination of professional basketball. Think comprehensive, amazing detail. Think of being in a bar and some guy starts talking about Moses Malone and he really knows what he's talking about, and when you look at the clock it's 3 a.m. I recall thinking about Bill Shirer plowing through those hundreds of tons of Nazi documents at Nuremberg. This sports guy, Bill Simmons, similarly turned the earth on every article or book or piece of film ever published on the NBA. He was, I would say, in his own way, as crazy as Hitler. This lump of prose is leavened by a sense of humor and a sweeping sense for what is greatness and what is not, and for what is bullshit and what is not. Early on, he spent a lot of time setting up an interview with Isaiah Thomas in Las Vegas at some outdoor gambling venue. But just when I started to fade and bail, he wrote that outdoor gambling is an unforgettable experience, like your first ride in a convertible. And when I read that, I relaxed and let him go. There is a topless swimming pool nearby for added interest, and he is a little fidgety about seeing Isaiah Thomas, who was the general manager of the Knicks at the time, and he had devoted many columns to gleefully ripping Thomas up one side and down the other for the lousy job he'd been doing, single-handedly destroying a franchise. But the interview went well. Thomas even divulged the secret to greatness, at least when it comes to basketball, and that is that it is not about basketball. The author left wondering how anyone could understand that so profoundly and demonstrate it so clearly in his career and still do such a terrible job as the general manager of the Knicks, making one crummy decision after another, misjudging personnel so badly that he seemed not like the guy who knew the secret, but was instead a random schmo who had no fucking clue. I enjoyed the book, even though it was too much for me. I can only take so much of a dissection and analysis of Dominique Wilkins. The author does his best to make it palatable. He likes lists and rankings. He had a list of the 33 greatest what-ifs in NBA history, which was offbeat, absorbing, and amusing. He also had a list of the greatest players and the greatest teams since the league's inception, and these can be fun things to contemplate and compile as opposed to studying the tactics of Heinrich Himmler. But I am not one who goes in for lists or lengthy discussions of purely subjective material. I am one who used to enjoy, and I still do to a lesser extent, watching an athlete do his very special thing, and even more and more rare, see a great team work its magic. The author of the book loves basketball, and that means we share something. I used to love to play, even though I was no good. Sometimes I would play with someone who was very good, a former high school star or a former pro athlete, and it was like seeing a picture of the distant wind-swept mountains in Tibet, a remote place of implacable grandeur that I might glimpse but never approach. It made me feel almost devotional, so I do understand this author's reverence for the game and superior execution, and even The Secret. It's just that I don't like to spend that much time in church, not even the church of the NBA.